fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 154 of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, joined by some excellent co-hosts this evening. First of all, we have David Walker, aka DW, aka at Falcoholic DW on the Twitters, the host of the Falcoholic podcast. DW, how are you doing tonight?
I am fantastic. It's good to be back with everybody.
Yep, a lot of fun. Good show coming up, folks. Also with us tonight, we have our director of guest personnel. He is Evan Birchfield, at the very easy to remember, at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Evan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Kevin.
Good. All right, guys. Well, we have a full show for you tonight. We are going to, of course, break down the signing of Josh Rosen, which is by far the most interesting thing that's happened this week, which isn't necessarily saying much, but, we do have that to talk about. We also had some relatively surprising cuts, I would say, after the second preseason game. We'll also be recapping said preseason game to give you guys our sort of top-level takeaways from that, and then we will also be previewing the final preseason game, trying to figure out if we are going to see any starters with Fox 5's Miles Garrett, who will be joining us around 9 p.m. Whenever he gets home, he'll be hopping in, so you guys have that to look forward to as well. But otherwise, guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic We do have a few spots left in the Fantasy League for Patreon, so if you're interested in getting in on that, Ray Moon, I believe you said you wanted to get in on that, but I can't remember. So if you did want in, say something in the chat, and I'll make sure to send you the link to it. But there's a couple spots left, folks. You still have time if you want. And then just a reminder to everyone, our next patron Q&A will be Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you're a patron or want to become a patron, you just have to do so by 5 o'clock to get access to that live stream. If you're not going to make it, you can send us your questions on Patreon via patron message or via comment on one of the posts. So with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get right to it. Josh Rosen, now a Falcon. I'm sure Eric Robinson's doing cartwheels because he seemed very excited about the prospect of signing Josh Rosen. I think I'm pretty meh. I think he's probably just going to get cut here in a week. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it. DW, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on the Josh Rosen signing? Do you think he potentially could be the backup going into the season, or do you think this is really just sort of an arm for the final preseason game?
He feels like a camp body, honestly. And, he wouldn't have been brought in if it weren't for the injury to A.J. McCarron. I think that's pretty clear. This guy's only getting the opportunity because A.J. freaking McCarron got injured. That should tell you about everything you need to know about Rosen. Now, that said, he is a former top 10 pick. He is a guy that, many people thought out of college had a ton of talent. And there have been many who have pointed out that Arthur Smith has had, his time at Tennessee, he revitalized the career of Ryan Tannehill. Although I think that's overstated because I think Tannehill was better as a quarterback, even when he was under Adam Gase in Miami. So is this a good opportunity for Rosen? Yes. I think this is outside of the 49ers, where I think this is the last team he was with. I think this is the best opportunity he's going to get to prove that he can still cut it in the league. But I think if you look at his history, this is his fifth team in 4 years as a former top 10 quarterback pick. The reality is the NFL, you don't give up on quarterbacks that quickly unless something has just gone horribly wrong. I don't know what we're going to see out of Rosen, but if I were to bet, I would not put money on him. I think they're still going to look for a veteran. I've seen some people say that Trevor Siemian may be a good cut candidate to pick up next week. And I think that makes a ton of sense because of the connection with Arthur Smith in the past. So, yeah, right now, I'm not on the Rosen train. I would love to be proven wrong, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and good opportunity to welcome in Adnan Ikic joining us now. Adnan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Good. Well, because you're late, you have to go last in the Josh Rosen discussion. So you're just going to have to wait a second while Evan gives us his take on the Rosen signing. Evan, what are your thoughts on that addition?
I mean, I don't really have a strong feeling either way. If it was between him and apparently they worked out Blake Bortles, I think we kind of know what to expect from Bortles, where Rosen, he just got out on the wrong foot with Arizona, didn't really get a fair shot behind a terrible offensive line there, went 3-10, and then they, got rid of him, got a new quarterback. In Miami, he went 0-3, had 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions. Like, he's had literally a terrible start to his career. But when you're, first round pick quarterback, you have high expectations. And, the problem for him is he's had all these tough opportunities. Like, he's not really got a fair chance anywhere. But now with Atlanta, this is the best situation he's been in. He's literally got to just beat out an undrafted, rookie to earn the quarterback 2 spot. I still think that the quarterback 2 will probably be somebody who's not on the roster, and it'll be somebody who is cut next week. But if Rosen comes out and balls out against Cleveland, there's no reason to think they wouldn't keep him. He's not going to cost a whole lot. He's super young, has talent. It's just not been displayed yet at the professional level, if it ever will be. So yeah, I mean, it's a low risk, could be high reward, could be not, a bust. Who knows? But it costs the Falcons close to nothing, so I'm not going to get too upset over it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you can. It was him and Bortles were like the only 2 guys really out there on the market that would even be considered somewhat interesting. And I guess I would have leaned Bortles, but that's because I'm a biased Bortles supporter who refuses to give up on
Well,
Bortles,
that's our UCF thing. But
yeah, exactly.
Even then, I'm still.
I mean, I don't like here. Again, I don't know that it mattered. I guess if they'd signed Bortles, I feel like, maybe that would have been okay, we just needed, maybe he's going to be our backup. With Rosen, I think it's much more up in the air whether he actually survives the next round of cuts.
And the smarter decision in hindsight would have just been to keep Kurt Benkert for $780,000.
Well,
who balled out for Green Bay. So
yeah, I don't know how many times we can criticize them for cutting Kurt Benkert. I literally do not see the point. Why bother cutting him? I just don't get it. So, we can definitely continue piling on about that. I agree with you there. That was a really dumb decision. Before we get to Adnan's take on Rosen, let me read off $10 donation from Ray Moon. Thank you, Ray, for your support. He says, I like Rosen, but currently still very much on the Felipe Franks hype train. I think he needs all the snaps he can get. Yeah, Ray, I mean, I don't think it's really that outlandish for the team to just say, screw it. We're just going to sort of roll with an untested backup. And if something were to happen to Ryan where he has to miss time, we could always sign someone off the scrap heap and just try to get through the week. Or you just throw Franks out there and basically, resign yourself to losing, which obviously not a lot of fun for us. But I mean, if you don't have Matt Ryan for any significant amount of time, probably better off to just get those draft picks, get the draft pick higher. But, we'll see. And we did have a donation from Corey Carter of $10 from the live play-by-play that I guess I missed right at the last minute. So I was going to wait till Corey was actually here to read it. But so Corey, if you're here, let me know. If not, I'll just wait and say that thank you to Corey for the $10 donation. We appreciate that. But Adnan, what do you think about the Rosen signing? Are you excited about it, or just kind of oh, this is just a camp arm?
Kind of feels like a camp arm. I can't say I'm really excited about signing a scrap heap quarterback right before the last preseason game. Don't get me wrong, Josh Rosen has talent. He came out of college football as the number 10 overall pick. He was in the running to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2018 season for a while there. But there's also a reason why he's on his 4th team now in his very young NFL career, 5th. DW's putting up the 5 sign for me. It's the 5th team. He did not get a fair shake in Arizona. The Cardinals had the worst offensive line, one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen in 2018. The weapons really weren't what they are now over there, and his head coach got replaced. The regime that selected him was completely turned upside down and replaced a year later. They had the number 1 overall pick, and Kyler Murray was the draft pick because Cliff Kingsbury wanted Kyler Murray. However, there is also a reason why Arizona was in the position to draft number 1 in the first place. If Josh Rosen was better, I'm not saying like good enough to make them a playoff team or anything like that, then had he shown more, then they probably wouldn't have been in position to take Kyler Murray in the first place, and he would have probably earned himself another opportunity with the Cardinals. The reason why he's on his 5th team right now is because of that draft pedigree. He was the 10th overall pick. He was very talented. He has a very good record at what he did at UCLA. But, at this point, I'm not really expecting anything. Like, if Josh Rosen ends up being the team's backup this year, then great. They replaced AJ McCarron with, a backup. If he gets cut, then, of course, I would not be surprised at all.
Right.
Josh Rosen is not the long-term answer for this team, by the way. Like, I know there are some people out there who are thinking, oh, this is the Matt Ryan replacement. He's 24 years old. Like, no, if Josh Rosen was good enough to become a franchise quarterback, he would not have been available for the Falcons to sign for $900,000, less than $1 million.
Right.
I don't know if that money's guaranteed, by the way.
Very unlikely that it's guaranteed.
Yeah, probably not. That would not be the smartest financial decision if it was.
I mean, if it's guaranteed, then he's their backup quarterback. But I don't think it's guaranteed. Yeah.
So it's like, yes, Josh Rosen is 24. It's very young for any quarterback. No, Josh Rosen is not going to be this team's franchise quarterback. If anything, this team's franchise quarterback most likely isn't in the NFL right now. He may not even be in college right now, if we're being honest.
Archie Manning.
Yeah, Arch Manning right there. I mean, I could get behind that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it's a mess signing. It's a quarterback. It's a high-profile quarterback from a few years ago, which is why it's making the rounds. But do you guys see that top 10 highlight tape that the team put together for him?
Geez. That poor intern, dude. I feel so bad for that guy. Just like, go dig through this awful film and try to find like any positive gain.
Probably took him like 3 hours that night.
Yep. Just wow. Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
And the comments were exactly as you expect.
I mean, they were asking for it for sure. With
that was just so tone deaf. It's like, no, we're not looking for a Josh Rosen top 10 highlight tape.
Yeah. It was. I definitely now I know what his 10 good plays in the NFL were, though. So that is nice to have that in the back pocket. But let's change gears here to the cuts, which I think were pretty surprising. And we'll start in reverse order this time. But yeah, I mean, honestly, 4 of the guys that were cut, for those that don't know, offensive lineman Willie Wright, wide receiver Austin Trammell, running back Javian Hawkins, defensive tackle Olive Sagapolu, and edge Sharif Miller were the 5 cuts. And 4 of those guys were on my roster projection last week as making the practice squad. Now, I will say that I think there's a chance that some of those guys, or maybe one of them, maybe 2 of them, could still end up on the squad. This team has been very big about subterfuge, so it wouldn't shock me if they knew that they wanted Trammell on the squad, and they wanted to make sure they didn't have to, or Hawkins or whatever, they wanted to make sure that they didn't have to claim him off, cut him and then try to claim him the next day to put him on the squad, because if they cut them now, they could sign them to the practice squad immediately after final cuts because they don't have to clear waivers if they're already out there. So could be subterfuge, but generally if you're cut at this point, it means that the team does not have you in their plans. So Adnan, what are your thoughts on these cuts? Did any of them surprise you? Any of them shock you? Or is this all pretty much just expected?
Well, yes, I was actually pretty surprised at my guy Javian Hawkins getting cut.
Yeah.
Just because I thought, coming into the season, he felt like he was one of the bigger named undrafted free agents. He did a lot at Louisville. He's someone I was pretty shocked wasn't drafted, at least on day 3. I mean, I thought, he could be someone whom this season, could be that change of pace back for the Falcons. but we clearly see Arthur Smith isn't really the biggest fan of those like, small,
No.
jittery, like
Yeah, not
lightning
at all.
type
Yeah.
plays.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we can see Caleb Huntley is someone who's performed pretty well the past couple of weeks, at least this past like game especially because he couldn't really do much behind that offensive line in the first preseason game, and I think Caleb Huntley's presence and his performance it gave coaches enough to see to kind of lock him in ahead of Javion Hawkins to the point where the coaching staff was convinced that Javion Hawkins wasn't going to be able to do anything to close that gap. Huntley's someone who I don't think many people really expected to come into the season to make a roster spot coming into training camp.
Yeah.
I don't remember him on many roster projections or depth chart projections for week one coming into camp. But he's someone you just have to tip your cap to as someone who's come in, who's put in the work. Kind of reminds me of Jaden Graham a couple of years ago. Someone you weren't really expecting to make it, but who really showed out at camp. And this is what camp is for. This is what preseason's for. It's not for the big name, the big star guys like Matt Ryan, who we haven't really seen in preseason yet. It's for these fringe undrafted players who are fighting for their dream in the NFL, and it's one of the best things to see. It's one of my favorite parts of the season and of training camp when those guys come in and they do the job, they impress the coaching staff, and they get a chance to live out their dream, even if it is as someone who's a second, third stringer on a depth chart. But not saying that Caleb Huntley has really made the team yet, but I think it's a good indication right now that Javion Hawkins, who is a high-profile undrafted free agent and someone who many of us were expecting to be on the running back depth chart, the fact that he's already cut, I think tells me that Caleb Huntley kind of has a bit of an in when it comes to making a roster spot, and that's just all credit to him. And maybe we do see Javion Hawkins on the practice squad eventually, but right now the coaching staff, they like who they like, and I can't really blame them given what we've seen in the preseason and in training camp thus far.
Yeah. I mean, Huntley is kind of a great example of athleticism does not make running backs. It's not the important trait for running backs, because if you look at Caleb Huntley's relative athletic score, it's awful. It's 18th percentile. He ran a 4.77 40. But he doesn't look slow on the field, and that's because he was making quick decisions and doing, I think, just carrying the ball well, despite the fact that he doesn't have long speed. So, I mean, I think that Caleb Huntley is a very low ceiling player, but the team clearly has a type, right? Arthur Smith wants those big running backs every time. Like he wants 4 of them. He doesn't even want a 4th guy that's a change of pace guy. He wants 4 big 200+ pound running backs on the roster, and he's going to get them. So it is definitely interesting. I know one for me that I was sad to see was Austin Trammell, who just absolutely got hosed with his injury. He missed 2 weeks of camp with that injury, and that just really screwed him. So I do hope that he's able to catch on the squad and come back for this team. But yeah, if he doesn't, it could be the end for his NFL career, which is just sad that a minor injury that keeps you out for a week or two could be the difference between making a roster and being out of the NFL. I mean, it's wild. So hopeful that he'll get another shot either in Atlanta or somewhere else. But yeah, Evan, go to you next. Any of these cuts catch your eye?
I think, as Adnan said, the Hawkins one was probably the biggest eye opener, just because I thought him and Huntley, would battle it out in the final, preseason game to kind of decide who gets the leg up. Huntley has looked better overall, so I don't blame the decision. But yeah, I got to Hawkins was one of the undrafted rookies I talked to, like, following the draft, and super cool guy. A lot of the viewers don't remember he came on the show. He was, wish the best for him going forward. I did think he might have had like a leg up early on because of as you mentioned, being a change of pace back while everyone else is basically like a bowling ball. But apparently Arthur Smith does have a type, and Huntley did look good. And, as you mentioned, ran a 4.7, but it did look quick on the field. So, if Huntley's makes the roster, or, he's a favorite for the practice squad, that's fine. But I hate it for Hawkins. Didn't get to really show himself in an extra game. That doesn't count, but he'll probably get picked up somewhere else, and wish the best for him going forward. I've liked Huntley though all the way. I just think he's going to be kind of fitting into what Arthur Smith likes to do a lot better. So that doesn't really surprise me. I thought he would win it in the end, but also I liked what I saw from Hawkins in limited action against Miami. In the first game, it was just a wash because the offensive line was garbage. But seeing both of them, late in the last game, both of them had a long of 30 yards and both looked pretty good. And I figured, we'll see them, duke it out against Cleveland. But I guess their mind was already made up, or as you mentioned, maybe they just want to sneak him onto the practice squad, which is entirely possible. But yeah, that was pretty much the only one that really raised some eyebrows.
Yeah, DW, your thoughts on this latest round of cuts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with all of you guys. Trammell, I was disappointed simply because the injury situation really screwed him up. But where Javian Hawkins is concerned, even though I felt like Huntley had the edge going into that final preseason game, I at least thought they would give Hawkins the opportunity to play one more game and see if he had a little bit more. So I was not surprised that he didn't make the roster. I was surprised that he was let go this soon. And honestly, we keep saying Arthur Smith has a type, and it certainly looks like that. But I think it's important to note that, in the running scheme he's going to deploy, more so than even just size, you're looking for a running back that has the ability to cut and go. You've got, when you run the wide zone, you need a running back who is going to be able to make that split-second decision to go wide or to cut back in, right, depending on how the blocks have developed on the second level. And it's quite possible because, let's be honest, the first two preseason games, it was hard to get a read for Hawkins and Huntley. So the coaches are probably seeing something in practice from Huntley that gives them the indication that he is better in making that quick split-second read of what's going on at the second level and whether he goes wide or whether he cuts back in. And that is crucial in this, in this running game. One other thing to keep in mind as well, with the revised rules on special teams, you no longer see offensive linemen line up on special teams to make those tackles. You see tight ends, you see wide receivers, and you see running backs. They make up the largest portion of special teams coverage now. And it is, quite possible that Huntley just simply was outplaying Hawkins in that regard. In fact, I think that's probably going to be a big factor for many of these guys. So we tend to overlook it and we talk about their fit. Realistically, Huntley probably isn't going to get a ton of snaps at running back this year. No. But if he plays, he's going to get a ton of snaps on special teams. And that may end up being the big deciding factor. But I still wanted to see Hawkins play one more game. I felt like there were other guys that could have disposed of and at least let him get in there.
Didn't he get the top payment out or whatever for undrafted rookies, or was
I think it was like
it was right behind Huntley. He was 5,000 less than Huntley, actually.
Oh, Huntley was the top one?
Yes,
in all of free. Oh, okay.
Yep. So that's definitely interesting. Yeah.
And right now, the team has 5 running backs. I think it's between Huntley and Deontay Foreman for that final spot, because Cordero Patterson I'm counting as a running back, and I'm sure the team is as well. Davis and Ollison feel safe. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the final battle. That's going to be the final showdown for this running back spot. I would think Huntley has, a bit of an edge just because he's younger and because, Foreman is just that pounding bruiser type.
Yeah.
But no matter what happens, Arthur Smith is gonna spread you out and just pound it up the middle.
He will. That's what he does. And I mean, honestly, Huntley has looked the best, and I think maybe the writing was on the wall for this based on how they divvied up the snaps, right? Because Huntley was always the first man up getting the snaps, followed by Foreman and then Hawkins. So if you take that as what it means is is this the order of the depth chart? Apparently it was, because Hawkins was the guy that ended up getting cut first. Really didn't get many opportunities in the preseason at all. And I think what DW said about the special teams value is certainly a factor, because Javian Hawkins is going to have very limited special teams value at his size. Whereas Caleb Huntley's 5'10", 210, that's a little bit more of a presence on special teams, especially if he's going out to make tackles. So that could easily have been sort of the tiebreaker there. I do think it's going to be Huntley. I did actually have Huntley overtaking Hawkins on my last roster projection. My one for this week, it hasn't come out yet. It will soon. But yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty clear that the coaching staff really liked Huntley, and this last preseason game hammered it home too that they gave him the most carries. So, it seems like he's currently in the lead still. Deontay Foreman's still sort of competing for that role, but it doesn't seem. I would be surprised if he overtakes Huntley at this point. Yeah, I mean that's as good a time as any to sort of transition to the preseason game recap. Before we do, want to read off a $1 donation from Solaire. He said, "As DW said and wished for, we got Josh Rosen, but now we need to do the right thing, and by that I mean get Tim Tebow for DW's sake." So, all right. So yeah, I guess I know Solaire's been driving the Tebow bus the whole time. So
do not put that fresh hell on my name.
Hey, I'm just saying, Tim Tebow would help sell tickets, and for a team that shamelessly signed Todd Gurley last year to sell tickets in the middle of a COVID season when there were no tickets to be sold, this team has done crazier things.
They have. I mean, it could be worse, right? Probably not, but yeah, oof. Anyway, let's move on to the preseason game, which also
Tebow would fit right into the blocking we've seen in preseason.
Right in the mix there. Yeah, let's start off with the offense, which was slightly more functional. Unfortunately, we only got to see a little bit of A.J. McCarron before he was injured, as you guys know. Ended up tearing his ACL, sadly, and is out for the season. But it's I'll give you guys an opportunity to sort of go around the horn here and share your top takeaway on offense, and we'll go reverse order again. DW, you can take the first one here. What's a takeaway you had from the offense in this preseason game?
Actually, it was a positive one, even though the results didn't look particularly good. But for me, the preseason is often about what kind of progression you see. And from that first preseason game to the second preseason game, again, because we're mostly dealing with the second team, so we're talking primarily about backups, what we saw as far as the progression of the offensive line was very encouraging to me. Now, granted, Caleb McGarry was back out there. I think that helps. But what we saw from guys like Drew Dahlman, Jalen Mayfield, who are competing for spots and could very well see time this year, we saw an offensive line that got better in 1 week of practice from preseason 1 to preseason 2. What that told me is a few things. Number one, the coaching staff got into the ears of these offensive linemen, and whatever they did in practice, whatever they did in those 7 days between those games, they got better results from them against arguably better competition because they were going up against the starters for Miami. So in many ways, that was, to me, one of the biggest takeaways. I feel like it's being overshadowed in the with everything else that people are paying attention to from that game. But I really loved seeing how the offensive line got substantially better from that first game to that second one, especially considering they were going up against starters against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a meteoric turnaround. They were just vastly better against starters after looking putrid against backups the previous week. I don't know. It must have, maybe they cooked up some, Fontenot brought some New Orleans voodoo with them or something. I don't know, but it definitely was a lot better. It still wasn't great, but the offense was at least functional. They were able to provide enough protection that they were able to run plays and get the ball out of the backfield on the ground and that sort of thing. So I agree with you there. That's definitely encouraging. Offensive linemen, Josh Andrews had a big rebound. He was one of the highest graded offensive line after being one of the worst last week. I thought Jalen Mayfield also looked fine at left guard, playing against the starters for a good portion. So that's encouraging as well.
Dahlman at center was pretty good.
Dahlman. Dahlman also. And undrafted free agent Ryan Newsel continues to impress, as that one Twitter account, the news updates, is very much hammering home that Newsel
That's actually Evans Burner.
Oh,
Yeah.
I should have known. I should have known Evan ran that account.
Well,
But,
you're on to me now.
Yep. Yeah. News updates account solely dedicated to Ryan Newsel. You have to respect it. But
Just ignore my DMs, Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fine. I knew it was you based on all the smileys in the DM. But yeah. So I agree with you there for sure. Before we get to Evan's takes on offense, let me read off a donation from Jason Gaines with the $3. Jason, thank you so much, man. We appreciate that. He says, I vehemently disagree with cutting Javian Hawkins. I think he's an NFL running back. Also disappointing to see Austin Trammell cut. Wanted him on the practice squad. Kurt Benker is playing well for the Packers. Should have kept him around as quarterback too. So far, I do not trust Terry Fontenot. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how all these players pan out, in the regular season. But yeah, I mean, right, I was definitely surprised by those cuts as well. So definitely something to monitor going forward. All right, Evan, what's a takeaway from you on the offense from this preseason game?
Since you guys covered offensive line and me talking about Ryan Newsel would be a little too obvious, I'll say Frank Darby. It was nice to see him. He's been, kind of a fan favorite going into preseason, and then finally got to actually showcase some. He had 2 catches on 2 targets for 27 yards, but one went long of 14. He looked pretty good. I'm expecting more from the wide receiver depth to kind of step up, because it seems like once you get past, Ridley and Gage are safe, and then Zacchaeus, it gets kind of, vacant. There's not like a whole lot there. So maybe in the next game, that'll be a big battle to watch, like between Christian Blake. Tajay Sharp in the last game looked better, and then in this one, he had some drops. Yeah. Especially the one I think of is the Franks one where, he launched it at him, but at the goal line like that, like you got to make the play. It would have been a touchdown. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess Frank Darby is what I'll go with.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to see Darby get involved, get some catches, some nice gains, because he was starting to sort of fall off the map where it was like, is this guy going to make the roster? Is he even going to make the squad?
Well, like fans had him penciled in as like wide receiver 4, basically.
Right, yeah.
And it's like we needed to see something.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we still have this weekend, so.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. It was nice to see Darby make some plays, because I think the coaching staff would like to give him the 5th wide receiver spot, but he's got to show something to get it over Christian Blake. And I'm still not sure he's shown enough. We'll see. This last game is probably going to be big for him. But yeah, I think Tajay Sharp is pretty much locked up wide receiver 4 based on where he's playing, the fact that he's making plays every week. I mean, he's one of the only like established veteran receivers on the roster.
I think he's technically the most veteran, like age-wise, right?
Maybe other than Calvin Ridley, yeah. But Calvin Ridley and Gage maybe have like 1 or 2 more years than him. But yeah, otherwise he's very much in that sort of. So I think he's pretty clearly the wide receiver 4, and he'll get regular snaps. But wide receiver 5 wide open. Christian Blake, Frank Darby certainly in the mix there. And no longer Austin Trammell in the mix, to my great disappointment. So sad to see that. But
Chris Rowland.
Chris Rowland. Chris
Rowland's still alive. He's still there.
He needs to win the return job probably to make it, though.
Right.
It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but we'll see. Yeah. But Adnan, what's an offensive takeaway you have from this game?
I was actually going to go with Darby just because he won.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had he had the highest PFF grade, but since we talked to Darby and offensive line, I'll circle back to Caleb Huntley. He had a big touchdown run overall, 9.5 yards per carry in this game. Looked good, looked fast, and like Kevin mentioned earlier, he looked a lot faster than his 40 time. And that matters a lot more on an actual football field when you have the ball in your hands, as opposed to, just sprinting down a 40-yard track at the NFL Combine. So, yeah, I definitely think that this performance with Huntley is probably what solidified Jalen Hawkins getting cut so early. And, I think right now he definitely does have probably an inside track at being that running back 4.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I thought Huntley was the most impressive, and I thought Hawkins was impressive too, honestly. He didn't really get an opportunity until the very end of the game, which was kind of sad. But honestly, that probably tells us what we need to know about why he got cut. But Huntley, I think, has performed better than any of us sort of thought he might. I think we knew he would be in the mix, but He's sort of seized running back 4, and it looks like he's pretty much taking control of that race for that last spot. So I'm excited to see, what he can do if he ends up getting any snaps at all this year, if he's sort of a stash guy as like the 4th running back who maybe plays on special teams. But definitely good for him, making himself known and carving out maybe a spot on the roster as an undrafted free agent at any position. That's impressive. So we'll see how he performs in this final game too. But yeah, my takeaway, you guys, I gave you guys, all the first opportunity, but I'll go with Felipe Franks because I think he had an opportunity in this game with AJ McCarron leaving to play with the 2s and show that, hey, look, I can be the backup quarterback, and he did not do that. If anything, he made it clear that he's not ready to be a second string quarterback at this point. And I still think like there's a decent chance that the team just sort of keeps him as the QB2 and is like, we're just gonna hope he never has to play. But I think honestly, he's not ready yet, and that shouldn't be surprising. I mean, it's definitely like I went on the Falcoholic podcast, and I think I made the bold prediction that, Franks would be the QB2. And, I think maybe that was, a little bold, but it was supposed to be a bold prediction. So, I'm sure you guys wanted the spicy take, but in reality, like, it's very difficult for an undrafted free agent to come in and be a backup quarterback, like, immediately. Like, it doesn't really happen very often. So, I think there's still potential with Franks. I do still think he'll probably be the practice squad quarterback, if only because his running ability and his dual threat ability makes him an excellent practice squad quarterback because he can help the Falcons prepare for those types of running quarterbacks better. The practice squad quarterback has to sort of simulate the opposing quarterback. So having a guy with that sort of skill set is valuable there. And I think he's, his talent, his athleticism makes him worth developing and seeing maybe if he can take the job in a year or two. But it was disappointing to see him get the chance that he was probably hoping for and sort of just flub it. He just did not perform well. I mean, he had a couple drives that looked good, but and he definitely got, again, drops, and that's kind of what you have to deal with with the preseason. But, sad to see Franks not really take control of that job, and that's why we have Josh Rosen and probably have another quarterback actually being on the roster when the season starts. So let's shift gears here to the defensive side of the ball. We'll go in reverse order once again, starting with Adnan this time. Adnan, what's a defensive takeaway you had from the preseason game?
Jonathan Bullard looked pretty nice. He had a sack, came away a TFL as well. He's someone who on the new depth chart is slotted in as starting next to Grady Jarrett, the depth chart that was just released a few days ago. So he's someone whom I would not say is really fighting for a job, more so is solidifying what his role is going to be in going into the regular season. Bullard looked really nice in the Tennessee game as well. So it is nice having, as much defensive line depth as possible. And, Marlon Davidson, who's right now is battling a bit of an injury right now, he's someone who, many of us thought would be that starting defensive lineman next to Grady Jarrett. He'll probably take a backseat right in the beginning and start out as a second stringer, but major props, major shout out to Bullard. And I know I get the Dolphins were 14-3 at halftime. They won 37-17, but this was their ones playing against our twos, and
for like the full first half, basically. So
yeah, like Miles Gaskin was tearing us up in this game. I'm sure Tua got a big confidence boost from playing against our reserves and bench players. We're gonna play against the Dolphins in the regular season this year, and I mean, I'll give it to you. I will be very worried if every one of our starters goes down to injury before that game. Then then we can look at this game as something more than just a meaningless preseason game.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Bullard was impressive, and he seems to pretty clearly have taken control of a roster spot with his play and his versatility. You know, he played on the inside and outside in this game, and we know that that's a strength of his. You know, he played 3-4 defensive end at times during his career and also 4-3 defensive tackle. So that versatility is valuable as well, and I think he's a good fit for the Dean Pease defense, and we're seeing that on the field in the preseason as well. All right, next up, Evan Birchfield. What's a defensive takeaway you had from this game?
Probably Fabian Moreau, being able to finally see him. I thought he looked good. I believe he was PFF's highest rated defensive player for our team. Yeah, that's about it. J.R. Pace, I think, looks pretty good. He's a safety, undrafted guy. And I really like our linebacker depth. Last week it was Etheridge who kind of stepped up, and Errol Thompson looked good too. This week Ellerby was big. He had 4 tackles, I think 8 total, but 4 assisted. Kobe Jones looked good. He's another guy. I really like our linebacker depth, but it was nice to see Fabian Moreau since he's actually like a starter.
Yeah, I agree. It was really nice to get. I was surprised that Fabian Moreau was playing. I was like, oh wait, that's actually Moreau playing. But he looked like a starter. Like he looked better than everybody else out there, and he covered the Dolphins starters without much issue. Like he was like Evan said, you know, the highest graded defender. So I think that's very encouraging. I think Moreau's been one of the most underrated additions to the team. And I think that at the end of the season, the Falcons, you know, if Moreau plays really well, they'll have a choice to make if they want to give him a contract or let him walk and potentially fetch the Falcons a nice comp pick in 2023. But, you know, they're going to have to sign some of these guys. Like they signed a lot of one-year deals. Some of these guys are going to be coming back. Some will not be. But it might be the ones that end up playing great that the Falcons sort of let leave because they're trying to load up on those comp picks. But some of them are going to stick around, and I'm curious if Moreau is going to be one of the ones that sticks around because if he plays well enough, you know, that's a foundational piece, potentially a nice corner to start opposite your young cornerback 1 who's ascending. So yeah, definitely agree with that one. DW, go to you next. What's a defensive takeaway you had from this one?
Couple of them. Number one, really excited about what Dean Pease is doing.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing him mixing it up, sending corner blitzes, bringing in the safeties up the A gap. This is a preview of what we're going to get in the regular season. I said this before. I'll say it again. It's going to be a boom or bust defense. There are going to be times those blitzes aren't going to get home, and we are going to pay. It's going to be painful. But there are also going to be times where it's going to come through, and it's going to be a fun defense to watch. At minimum, Dean Pease is, I think, going to make an impact this year, and it's going to be a fun defense to watch. But the player that I've been focusing on, because I think the long-term potential for this guy is actually really promising, is safety Jalen Hawkins. Right now, he is our highest graded player on defense by PFF. And if you look at what he's done in the games, that holds up. And he's doing it in every aspect. He's been good in coverage. He has been good close to the line of scrimmage. He has been good in the pass rush. We remember that blitz he had in game 1 where he absolutely crushed the quarterback. He was doing everything you could possibly ask for from a safety. And considering we've got 2, you know, rental guys this year in Eric Harris and Deron Harmon, there were questions about who the next safety would be. Would the Falcons have to draft another safety in 2022 to put next to Richie Grant when we're not leaning on these veterans anymore? And I think Hawkins is making a very strong case that he could be a starter in 2022. And I think with right now, Richie Grant just needs time to develop, which is not unheard of for safeties. So please don't freak out about this. I think Jalen Hawkins could see significant playing time this season, and he's earned it. Like he's legitimately looked not just serviceable, he's looked good. He's looked really good out there, and I'm excited to see how he develops.
Yeah. And speaking of Richie Grant, I mean, that's who I was going to mention. So I agree with you on Jalen Hawkins. I think he's been more consistent overall than Richie Grant. I think he definitely had a flashier game last week. He was just kind of quietly solid this week. But Grant, you know, I think people were sort of waiting for Richie Grant to make an impact at some point in the preseason, to see a flashy play from him. And he did make one in this game. You know, he had the pass breakup on Jalen Waddle. He was also one of the highest graded defenders per PFF this week. And that's what you want to see from your second round pick. He's going to have his ups and downs. He's kind of been known as a risk-taking safety in college, an aggressive sort of ball-hawking safety, and those guys are going to have their share of mistakes, especially in their rookie season, and especially in a defense like Dean Pease where he's putting a lot on their plates. So Grant had a good game. Excited to see what he does in the future. Also have a special guest joining us now right on time, Miles Garrett from Fox 5, so let's get him in here. Hey, Miles, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are y'all doing?
Good. Yeah, welcome to the show. He is Miles Garrett from Fox 5 Sports, at Miles Garrett TV on Twitter, I believe is the handle, right?
Yes,
Perfect. All right, Miles. Well, we just got wrapped up with our thoughts on the preseason game, but I wanted to give you a chance as well, since you're joining us a little bit later. Did you have any sort of key takeaways from the first preseason game that you wanted to sort of get off your chest?
From the first? The
second. Yeah, they're all blending together. They're all blending together for me at this point. So.
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well. They've sort of been the same. It's been sort of just a dog pile of just awfulness. There hasn't been a lot of good things to pull from it. But I mean, hey, none of the starters have played. You can't really judge a book by what we've seen so far. I think we'll get a better feel for how this team's going to look, maybe the first or second drive. I think we've been hearing that the starters are in fact going to play at least a drive for this final game against the Browns. But so far, it hasn't been good. I mean, I think anyone with a brain watching football has been able to tell that from watching these two games. But again, it's the backups. Just the biggest concern is the depth, because God forbid if Matt Ryan goes down, then there's going to be a problem.
Yeah. It's been the depth has not been great. We'll say there's definitely been a handful of nice performances there, but not super encouraging overall. But yeah, I also wanted to give you a chance to talk about Josh Rosen, since that's apparently the story of the week. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but wanted to let you get your takeaway there. Do you think he has a chance to maybe stick, or is this more of like just a camp arm here for the last preseason game?
It's interesting, really, because from what I'm hearing and from what Arthur Smith has been saying, I think he's not going to be the only one they're going to bring in, whether that's a workout or whether that's actually signing. I don't think they want Felipe Franks currently as their backup. I think he was brought in originally, and this is just observations from practice and seeing the reps he was getting. They wanted him to be that practice squad guy.
Yeah.
They do. And again, it's obvious from watching him, the guy's not ready to be a backup quarterback. I mean, he's made a couple nice plays, and he's made the plays that have, given teams potential for the future down the line, developmental prospect, whatever you might be, situational guy. But as far as a backup quarterback, he's just not there yet. Will he turn into it? I don't know. I personally never saw it, because the guy you're seeing on the field is exactly the guy you saw at Florida and Arkansas, the guy that all that potential, rocket arm, huge, can move, but he just never really put it together. So
yeah,
again, I think he's a practice squad guy. I think they want Josh Rosen to take this QB2 job. I think a lot of Falcons fans should want that too. I know everyone on Twitter is like, oh, but Felipe Franks is playing well. Trust me, you do not want Felipe Franks as the backup quarterback to Matt Ryan. And again, I'm not saying Josh Rosen is, the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I'm taking him over Felipe Franks right now. And again, I think he's got a lot of upside too. He's 24 years old. He's, I think, argue as you want, but I think he hasn't really been given too much of a fair shot in the NFL. Everywhere that he's been has never really wanted him. Mm-hmm. Granted, I'm sure there's a lot of, what he has actually put into practice. I'm sure there's been a lot to do with that too. But at the end of the day, it could be a good spot for him, and it's very low risk, high reward for the Falcons.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we sort of covered him early in the show, so I won't necessarily rehash it all. But yeah, I agree with you there. I think he of the guys that were available, I mean, certainly someone who's intriguing and worth a look. It's going to be tough for him to really impress on such short notice, with this last game. So it's really going to be about the practice for him, and if he can sort of make enough of an impact for the team to be like, all right, like, we'll take you into the season. But I think it's an uphill battle for him. But we'll see. We'll see if it works out. And then before we move on to the third preseason game and our sort of things to watch there, the Falcons made another round of cuts. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about any of those players before we moved on.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first, the guys that they cut were expected. Everyone was seemingly kind of surprised by, Javian Hawkins getting cut. But as someone who's been to a lot of the training camp practices and, has been watching some of these games, I wasn't surprised by that. He was the last guy getting the reps. He's a bit undersized. It was just, he seemed like the odd man out. This running back room is extremely crowded right now. And as much as I liked his potential, he's really quick. And, you saw that big run he had against Miami there right before Caleb Huntley scored. He was the odd man out, and it's unfortunate because I think he's got talent, but this was something I could see coming. And as far as the other guys, it was fairly obvious those other guys were going to be out the door.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It was tough because like Austin Trammell, I was a big fan of, and that injury just really screwed him. And I feel for the guy, and I hope he can catch on somewhere. Maybe come back on the practice squad. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, Hawkins was definitely the most surprising of the guys on that list. So, all right, well let's transition to some third preseason game talk here with the Falcons facing the Browns on. I gotta get, since you mentioned it now, I feel like maybe I was saying first preseason game other times, and it's got me worried. So
they've all blended together.
Yeah. But the Falcons will be taking on the Browns on Sunday at 8:00. And as Miles said, possibly going to see the starters. I don't trust Arthur Smith at this point, so we'll see. But Miles, I'll let you take the first crack at it since you're our special guest. What's something you're going to be watching for specifically during the final preseason game?
Yeah, I mean, it's the cliche answer, but man, I want to see some Kyle Pitts. I mean, is it too much to ask to see the first round pick play? We've seen Justin Fields, we've seen Trey Lance, we've seen all these top prospects play. I just want to see what he's got. I mean, I've seen him at practice. The dude's the real deal. I mean, you look at him on the practice field and you're like, this guy is different. He's making plays that other guys can't, just the physicality of him. He looks like I hate to say it, but he kind of looks like Julio Jones did when he was out there, just the physicality of it himself. Yeah, I know. But, it's hard to ignore, what he brings to the table. And I just want to see him play. Arthur Smith's been teasing us the last 2 weeks by dressing him pregame shots. They always show him, warming up, catching passes, fully padded up. And then, nope, we're going to put on flip-flops after that. So,
yep,
I'd like to see some Kyle Pitts. I don't really think I need to see him. I'd like to see Matt Ryan if Kyle Pitts is on the field, but we all know what Matt Ryan's going to do. I'd rather have more focus on Josh Rosen and Felipe Franks to get that more figured out. And again, it's just, I'm not a big fan of the preseason. I don't think it's that it's not who is really, I don't think it's necessary. You saw what happened to Travis Etienne the other night, and I don't want to see that happen to Mike Davis. I don't want to see that happen to Cordell Patterson. I'd like to see, I want football as much as the next guy. I want to see the starters play, but at what cost? I don't want to see anybody get hurt. So, I don't think I need to see Matt Ryan. Would I like, if Matt Ryan goes onto the field, I'll be excited, but I don't think I need to see it. I want to see Kyle Pitts. That's the main one. Yeah,
I agree with you there. It's sort of like, oh, I want to, but like, I don't really want to also. Like, sure, it would be fun for me because I'm going to be doing play-by-play. Yeah, I'd like to call the starters, but
absolutely,
I also don't really want to see them out there, and I think it's smart to get them a series or two just to sort of warm up, and that's about as low risk as you can make it. But
and you saw it last week too. What happened to Jalen Waddle on that first drive? He goes down, and like my immediate thought was like, this is why Kyle Pitts isn't playing. This is why I don't need to see him right now, because if this happens, then everyone's like, "Why the hell did you play him?" This was so dumb. There was no reason for that. So
yeah, exactly. So
2020.
Yep, exactly. Agree with you there. Agree with Kyle Pitts for sure. All right, next up, let's go to David Walker, DW. DW, do you have something you're going to be watching for during Sunday's preseason game?
I mean, I want to say Kyle Pitts.
It's okay. I'll let you like say that, just this once. Yeah.
It's going to be in Atlanta, so I want to see if they have the graphic ready for Kyle Pitts, because we all know what they're going to do, right? They're going to have a Falcon. They're going to have a Falcon that's going to fly out. It's going to have a freaking unicorn on its head, and it's going to they're going to do that, and it's predictable. But I want to see it, and it's but. In all seriousness, I want to see the progression of the offensive line. I feel like, again, especially as we're talking about some of these guys who could potentially get snaps this year, Jalen Mayfield, Drew Dahlman, Josh Andrews at left guard. these are guys who may see snaps this year. Remember, it is exceedingly rare for you to have all 5 starters play all 17 games now.
Right.
So there is some point in the season which these guys are going to get some significant snaps. And they made improvement from game 1 to game 2. We know how important the offensive line is for Arthur Smith's scheme, what he wants to do. I want to see what they do as far as improving from game 2 to game 3. Are we seeing those leaps where they're beginning to correspond with each other in those second level blocks? You talk about the wide zone scheme. That is, the timing is the most difficult aspect of this. You've got your primary read who's going into the second level, and the guy next to him has to know what he's doing. And that level of communication, that is going to come down. That's going to show us what the coaching staff is doing.
Yep.
Whether they are making these guys get this offense. And if we're going to see an improvement in the running game, it's going to come down to those guys in the trenches. So I want to say Kyle Pitts because we all want to see Kyle Pitts, but I
sorry to steal your thunder there, David.
I know it's all good, man. The special guests get the cookie. For me though, it's we've talked about it a lot, in the off season, and we've talked about it, in the past several years. I want the Falcons to start winning in the trenches, and I want to see if they're making progress in that regard.
Yeah, definitely smart there. I mean, I think the offensive line is one of the most important things we need to see. And like, we haven't seen Matt Hennessy at center at all. Like, we don't know what that's going to look like at all. I mean, we saw it last year for a couple games, and of course he got baptized by fire against Chris Jones and Vita Vea, but definitely don't think, people should take much from that performance. But yeah, that's a good one. I also want to see what the offensive line looks like. If the starters play at all, I think they probably will a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely a good one to watch. And also Kyle Pitts. But yeah, Evan, what's something you're going to be watching for during Sunday's preseason game?
I mentioned it last week, but it's going to remain the same this week. I want to see what the wide receiver depth is going to do. Once you get past Ridley, Gage, and Zacchaeus, it's kind of, up in the air. Sharp's obviously the favorite, but there's still Christian Blake, who has experience with this team. Trevor Davis, who has experience elsewhere. Haven't seen a whole lot of Antonio Nunn at all. But like Frank Darby, a lot of potential. Like to see him step up. Because, I think the expectation is they'll probably just keep 5 receivers. It's possible they could keep 6, but the way the offensive scheme is, probably 5. So, who's going to be the odd man out? As we talked about earlier, Chris Rowland's probably not got a good chance because of, he's not going to bring a whole lot elsewhere. Like with the return battle, it's pretty much Avery Williams at this point. Yeah. And then Trevor Davis, I think he had a kick return last week, I believe. So like he can bring that, but obviously we have that with Cordero Patterson. So it's not like he's got a leg up on anybody. Yeah. I'm going to be pretty much focused on the receiving battle, but obviously that's going to factor in with the offensive line play. And then if Rosen and Franks are able to actually throw it to them. So, it's going to rely on a whole lot, but I would love to see somebody kind of step up. Last week was the 2 leading receivers for all of preseason, which has only been 2 games. But, that was Darby had 27 yards, and I think Sharp had 27 yards exactly too.
Should have had a touchdown.
Yeah. We talked about that earlier too, the goal line. I want one of these guys to just come out and have like a 50-something yard receiving day with a touchdown and be like, okay, that there's somebody there. But once you get past the top 3, it's kind of bleak.
Yeah, it's definitely unproven. That's for sure. So yeah, I think it's big. I would like to see, like, we haven't really seen Zacchaeus either. Like he's sort of penciled in as the wide receiver 3, and it's like we haven't really even gotten to see him out there. I thought he looked really good in camp, and was pretty clearly the 3rd best wide receiver out there. He just kind of looked like a step above the other options. But even that's a little bit of a question mark, and it seems like that's kind of been a big thing with Arthur Smith. To kind of keep stuff under wraps. Like, he's not really showing much of his starters, and obviously the play calls have been exceptionally vanilla thus far, which is not surprising for preseason, but I get the feeling from Arthur Smith and the way he sort of has been about injuries and such that subterfuge is a big part of it for him. So I think, it's not entirely surprising that he's tried to keep as much of his starters and his system under wraps as possible going into week 1. All right, Adnan, what's something you're going to be watching for in this final preseason game?
I am eager and curious to see if the starters play for both sides. Not for like a full half or anything like that, because I don't think that's going to happen either way. But for maybe a couple of series out there, just for the offensive players to shake off that rust being on an actual football field against actual football players, and a sanctioned like football event. Um, it would be nice. There is a small injury risk. There is a bit of an injury risk there, but you know, I don't like the idea of none of the starters playing a single snap going into the regular season, especially with the brand new coaching staff here and completely brand new playbooks. And I would like to see how they would potentially fare against a Cleveland Browns team that was very, very good last year. I know that's surprising to say in this day and age after how bad the Browns have been the past 2 decades. But the Browns were, they were a playoff team and they embarrassed the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, and I think it was the wild card round. That's a team where at least for a couple of series, you can use that as a bit of a barometer for kind of where you are right now, especially like what DW was saying in the trenches. Browns have a very, very good offensive line. That will be a spectacular test for the Falcons' defensive line rotation.
Yeah.
The Browns have their own Miles Garrett, who's a bit of a monster on defense. And they have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. So also selfishly, just because I will be right there with you doing color commentary for that game, that this is a plug for our live show that's going to be happening on Sunday night during the game. By the way, it would be very entertaining for us personally also to see the starters out there for at least a couple of series.
Yeah, I agree. Agree with all of that. Definitely agree with the plug of our Sunday night live play-by-play show and pre-show starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely check that out, guys. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Hopefully, I would say that the first two have been fun. I would say that the games have been not so fun, but the commentary is always fun. Yeah, we have a good time here. But before we get to my thing to watch for, do want to remind folks to please like and subscribe. We appreciate that. Those all help us grow on YouTube. We appreciate those metrics. And let me read off a $5 donation here from Ray Moon. Thanks again for your support, Ray. Ray says, so Arthur Smith says Josh Rosen will get a fair shot. How much do you guys think he plays? That's a good question, because I don't know if they're going to give Felipe Franks the first set of plays or if they're going to immediately hand it to Josh Rosen. I guess I would assume Franks is the second quarterback off the bench, or the first quarterback off the bench, I guess. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. Miles, I'll let you take the first crack at it. You think Rosen's going to get a lot of snaps, or is he going to be behind Franks?
I think they're going to get equal amount of snaps today. Arthur Smith talked, and Matt Ryan talked today too, about that situation. Basically, again, in practice today, Franks was taking the second team reps. So I'm expecting Franks to come out and be the first quarterback to play. It might be a thing where, again, barring if Matt Ryan plays at all. But again, taking out Matt Ryan, I'm assuming Franks is that first guy to come out. And if that happens, I'm expecting them to get equal time. Arthur Smith is pretty clear today that he says he wants to give them both a fair shot to win the quarterback 2 job. And for that to happen, we need to see at least a half of Josh Rosen, I think, to be fair. Yeah. So if that's the case, I'd probably expect to see Franks come out for maybe 2 drives in the beginning, right after Matt comes out, if he does come out, and then Josh gets 2 drives. And ideally that'll happen before half. Again, who knows how many drives they'll get. I doubt they'll do like a switcheroo, like Josh gets a drive, Franks gets a drive, Josh gets a drive, Franks gets a drive.
Right.
I think it'll be more of, Franks will get his time and Josh will get his time. So it's unpredictable because, as you said, Arthur Smith, it does kind of like to, play things close to the chest. But I think they're both going to get a fair shot, and at least as far as equal amount of playing time is concerned.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Anybody else have a Josh Rosen playtime take they want to get off?
I mean, they didn't sign him just to keep him on the bench in this last preseason game. I think he'll get probably a significant amount of playing time because also I agree with what Miles said earlier. I think the team wants Josh Rosen to win this QB2 job. Felipe Franks in that first preseason game, there was a good portion of the fan base that was clamoring for him to become that QB2 just because he looked good in comparison to what we saw from AJ McCarron earlier. But I think that's kind of a case of you having a very unattractive friend and standing next to him or her, and then you're a lot more attractive as a result of that. Just because AJ McCarron, his skill set did not translate well to being behind a very poor offensive line, whereas Felipe Franks' skill set it's pretty much made for kind of surviving that chaos in the backfield of the offensive line, just being terrible in front of him, just because he's so big and he can move around and he can escape pressure with his legs. So as a result, Franks looked maybe better than he was just because you're comparing him to what you saw from McCarron. But then we saw it last week. Felipe Franks, he's not ready to be the QB2 on this team, and I'm sure Arthur Smith sees that as well, sees it better than we do. So I definitely think if Josh Rosen plays poorly, he'll definitely get his chance. And Franks, I think right now is playing to be either the QB3 and to possibly stay off the practice squad if he plays well enough. I think he's done enough to be on the practice squad at this point. But I think if Rosen doesn't play well, then they may just cut him and look for maybe even Blake Bortles after this game. I know they worked Bortles out before signing Rosen as well.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Can't disagree with that either. So yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a fair amount of Rosen, I think, is the consensus, and we'll see if that translates to good play or poor play. I think it's going to be tough for him to look good, considering he's only going to have a handful of days to really get set in the offense. Now, he's played in similar offenses before, West Coast vanilla scheme, probably not going to be all that difficult to sort of grasp going for a preseason game, but yeah, it'll be tough for him to look great after just only a couple days. But yeah,
I will say to that point, I actually learned something today from our DJ Shockley, a former quarterback with the Falcons, about because I asked him that. I was like, a guy that's just signed, and has to play a game within the week. He's obviously not going to learn the entire playbook by then. What's the procedure for him? And he said that it's interesting now because with the headset, they don't necessarily give the play. They give, you're going to roll out to your right and this guy's going to run a slant. You're going to throw it to him. Or these are your progressions. So they don't necessarily have to learn the entire playbook. I'm sure it helps. But that was an interesting tidbit I found out today that a lot of that they do with a lot of new quarterbacks who come in. They just sort of tell them where to throw it in their headset.
All right. Hey, that works. I mean, it's better than nothing. So.
Hey, I'm pretty sure Sean McVay was doing that with Jared Goff
during the regular season. Yeah.
Actually, could you talk to DJ Shockley? Maybe he could suit up and be our QB2.
I asked him, and he's about, I think, just a couple years older than Matt Ryan, so why not?
Yeah, why not? I mean, hey, I wouldn't be against it. I think we should open up, have open tryouts for the QB2 if the Rosen signing doesn't work out. So, and I think Shockley would definitely be one of the best people to show up to some sort of open tryout. No doubt. But yeah. In terms of stuff that I'll be watching for, I mean, I want to see the defense. I think in particular the coverage from the backup linebackers has been pretty lacking. So seeing Deion Jones and Foye out there, two guys both known for their coverage, I want to see how that sort of looks. And just how the defense plays in general. The starting secondary, AJ Terrell, does he sort of convert his strong camp into a strong season and a strong performance? We've seen a little bit of Fabian Moreau. He looked good. Does that, keep up with the first string defense as well? So that's the thing for me that I want to watch. I mean, you guys covered a lot of the offense. Obviously, Kyle Pitts is going to be very exciting. But, I want to see what this defense looks like. We haven't seen any of Eric Harris and Daron Harmon either. So, I mean, there's just a lot to watch for if those starters do get out there, because it's pretty much a complete unknown at this point how that first string defense is going to look with all those guys out there. But yeah, before we sign off, we're going to end on a spicy note. We're going to do a bold preseason prediction. All right. So I'll let DW take us off here because I know DW's got the spicy takes. DW, what's your spiciest preseason prediction for this final game?
Matt Ryan gets cut. Felipe Franks is the starter.
No, that's too spicy.
It doesn't get spicier than that. That's the kind of spice where if I eat I'll look into the future.
I asked for spicy, so I guess I asked for this. But
yeah, you asked for that.
I did.
Sorry.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, I've actually been pounding this table for a while since I saw him at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think it may be moving into the realm of possibility. But when the Falcons lost Jaden Graham, they lost a good player on special teams. They lost their de facto tight end number 4. I think John Rain is actually in line to snag that last tight end position. He's got the versatility that they love. He could play fullback. They actually lined him up in fullback, I believe, on the very first play of the second preseason game. He plays tight end, more of an H-back tight end, but still nonetheless. And I think he's a guy that's also showing that he can contribute somewhat on special teams. So my prediction, John Rain makes the 53-man roster as a 4th tight end.
Yeah, that's pretty spicy. I agree with you there. He's been making my roster in each of my projections after Jaden Graham unfortunately went down, and he's going to be making my roster in this last one as well. So, yeah, that's a good one. All right, Miles, you're up next. What's your spicy preseason prediction?
Josh Rosen goes 10 for 12, 115 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and takes this QB2 job, leaves Felipe Franks in the dust.
All right.
I guarantee you there's going to be a subsection of the fan base calling for him to start.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. He's only 24.
Yeah, Matt Ryan will go like 3 and out on the first drive because he gets like a pass batted at the line or something like that, and they'll be like, "All right, Josh Rosen, it's time, let's go." I like the positivity of these takes so far. That's good. This is good. Yeah.
That's the stuff of nightmares. Him going defending Matt Ryan for 2 weeks over Josh Rosen is going to drive me to drinking.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Just drink preemptively. That's my recommendation. But
that's what I do.
Yeah,
anyways.
I like it. I like the positivity though. That would be cool if Josh Rosen could actually, show some positive quarterback play because we've been lacking it this preseason. That's for sure. All right, let's go next to Evan Birchfield. Evan, what's your spicy preseason take for this final game?
Ryan Nazel's going to make the roster.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That would I mean I'm not necessarily against it. I mean he kind of just has to beat out like Sam Jones,
right?
Who
and
I
think he can do that.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that Sam Jones has is that he has played center and tackle in the NFL. So as the sort of last guy on the roster, he kind of makes sense from that angle. But yeah, I mean I think Newsel has been impressive enough that you might be worried that he does get poached because look, offensive linemen are in short supply. We know this. So yeah, I like it. I like that one a lot. Adnan, your spicy preseason take.
Yeah, I predict the Falcons' Twitter will be in shambles no matter what happens.
That's very cold take. That's a very cold take.
Yeah, that's the most mild take I could have done. I don't know if it's super spicy, but I definitely think that we will come out of this game with Frank Darby winning that last roster spot on the wide receiver depth chart. I think that this coaching staff is rooting for Frank Darby to win it just because, he is their draft pick. He is, he's younger than Christian Blake. We know what Christian Blake brings to the table. Solid wide receiver. I think even if he doesn't make the roster for the Falcons, he'll make at least a practice squad somewhere. But, I think Frank Darby will, have a very good game. I think he'll show out. He'll be that wide receiver that, Evan was mentioning earlier that he wants to go for 50-plus yards and, possibly even a touchdown. Oh, another one, I think the offense will actually score a touchdown in this game.
Well, they did this week, right? But you mean like the starters.
I mean like a meaningful touchdown.
Not a garbage one.
Yeah, where it's like, actually like close, maybe even a first half touchdown. But I know it's
spicy.
Not. It's not exactly the spiciest take. I see Kay Green in the chat is complaining about our lack of spice, but we have a 17-game regular season. There's going to be plenty of hot takes to be thrown around. I just don't think that the stage is really set for anything like incredibly like surprising happening in this as a result of this preseason game.
All right. I got the spicy one for you guys. Avery Williams scores a return touchdown in the final preseason game.
I'm gonna need some Tums after that one.
Emphatically wins the return job based on that. Yeah, I like Solaire's. The Falcons actually win on Sunday. That's way too spicy, Solaire.
I don't think I'd go that far either.
Yeah, but no, I think I'll make it spicy by saying touchdown, but I do think Avery Williams is going to have a great game as a returner in this one. I think he'll get the bulk of the opportunities, and I think he'll sort of emphatically stamp his mark on the roster. And I think he honestly has played really well as a corner too, which is not necessarily what we were expecting, but I like it. I like Williams a lot. I was also going to say something about Ogundiji if someone had mentioned Williams, but I think Ogundiji will be starting by the end of the season. That's my spicy long-term take as well. But so yeah, guys. Well, first of all, let me thank Miles Garrett for joining us tonight. I know you've got a really busy schedule, especially during the actual season, Miles. So thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we let everyone sort of plug their stuff, remind you guys that, like we said earlier in the show, we're going to be doing our play-by-play of the final preseason game starting on Sunday at 7:30, so you guys can join us for that. That's generally been fun, despite the games being pretty terrible, so hopefully the game will be better and, the coverage will still be good. And then also, guys, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate both of those metrics. Those help us out. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Falcoholic Live if you're interested in supporting the show on a monthly basis. And then the link to the community Discord is in the show description if you're interested in taking part in that. That starts to really get going during the season. So check that out if you're so inclined. But let me once again thank our special guest, Miles Garrett. He is on Twitter at MilesGarrettTV. Miles, anything that you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, actually working on it right now. We are working on our Falcons programming. We're the official station of the Atlanta Falcons this year. So we've got 3 shows. That's not even including our pre- and post-game shows for the Falcons. So we've got Rise Up Tonight, Early Birds, and Dirty Bird Report. They are Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Really great shows. We really get to go in depth with these guys. So, you guys should tune in.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Check that out for sure. And once again, thanks to Miles for coming on, taking the time to introduce himself to all you good people. So also with us tonight, we have David Walker. He is at Falcoholic DW on Twitter. DW, anything you're working on you'd like to let the people know about? Obviously, we got the Falcoholic podcast rocking as well.
Yeah, we're kicking up with a podcast, and I'll have to DM Miles and see if he can spare some time for me on the podcast as well.
Absolutely.
No, you can't have him. He's mine now.
On Twitter, absolutely.
We're doing a lot with the podcast. We have a talk with Michael Rothstein from ESPN that's currently up. A lot of fun. He's a great guy. I do want to say I've been watching the Falcons since 1980, since I'm the senior guy here at the Falcoholic. And I do want to say this sincerely. Right now, for Falcons fans, we have some of the best beat writers. We have some of the best coverage. And actually, I think the work that Miles, Kelly Price, Justin Felder, DJ Shockley are doing at Fox 5 is the best we've seen in Atlanta in a very long time. So kudos to Miles and the rest of that team. They're doing really good work. So you guys definitely check them out. I do actually watch the shows, so kudos to you guys.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, check us out at the Falcoholic, and of course the Falcoholic podcast on iTunes, Google, anywhere good podcasts are found.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Check that out. Also with us tonight, we have Evan Birchfield at the very easy to remember at Evan Birchfield. Evan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Not off the top of my head. Miles, thanks for coming on. Me and DW have our post-game pod after every game, so look for that. That's about it. You can find me at Evan Birchfield on Twitter, and don't go crazy over preseason games.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Life's too short to get worked up over the preseason. I got enough time. I'll spend enough time getting worked up over the regular season. I don't have time for the preseason, that's for sure. So, also with us, last but not least, Adnan Ikic. He is at Say Which Way on the Twitters. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
My article series trying to find the greatest moment in Falcons history is coming down to a close. Got to the finals, and it's been a fun ride. Your votes determine who goes through. Your suggestions determined who was in the bracket, and your votes determined what the seating was. So don't be mad at me when you see what it is, and when you see so much Matt Ryan centricism.
It's not your fault. Like, you put in all the moments. It was up to the people to decide.
Yes. But don't comment saying, "Oh, it should have been this play," or like, "Why did this play lose?" It's your votes. I don't decide any of this. But yeah, also we mentioned it earlier. Check out our play-by-play this Sunday night. Like Kevin said, we'll be going live at 7:30, and we'll sit through another 3.5 hours of another preseason game, watching every play and breaking each play down for you guys. And we'll definitely it'll definitely be a lot more fun when we're all doing it together, and when we're all watching and interacting with it together. A lot more fun than just watching the preseason regularly would be. So check that out definitely.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. The preseason's pretty boring if you watch it by yourself, in my opinion. I mean, you guys can do whatever you want, but all right, guys. Finally, I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I'll have my last preseason roster projection coming out either tomorrow or Friday, so you guys can keep an eye on that. I'll also be updating the sorted printable roster for the game as well, so you guys can keep an eye out for that if you've been following along with that. Yeah, guys. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Again, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you again on Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for our pregame show, and then straight into our live play-by-play of Falcons versus Brown in Week 3 of the preseason. For all of us here at the Falcoholic Live and Miles Garrett from Fox 5, thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you guys next time. Have